Welcome back to our second episode of Built It in Blue Jeans. We're here at Aunt Toadies with my aunt and uncle, Mary Jane and Larry McHenry, and they're going to tell us about their business and what they've gone through. Don't forget to give us a like and a subscribe. And so anyways, I'll cut to it. So tell us your stories, guys.
Well, we've been Aunt Toadies for almost 18 years. We both have restaurant background. We both worked at a restaurant, J.T. Maloney's in Nevada, for many years. He was kitchen manager. I was in charge of the waitresses. I left that to have babies and go into banking, and he continued to work for other people for a long time, and then finally decided wanted to try it for ourselves.
Yeah. What was your jumping off point to working other jobs to, okay, let's do this?
Just got tired of working for someone else.
Yeah.
Just got tired of not being my own boss.
Yeah.
Larry was a very good employee to have at a restaurant, though, because he would take chairs home every night and fix the wooden chairs and bring them back. And if a stool was backed up, he'd clear it out. He did a lot of side stuff that a normal employee wouldn't do, and got tired. He said, "I'm doing this. I might as well be doing it for myself." So.
Yeah. What's the scariest thing about going, okay, I'm gonna be self-employed, I'm gonna do this? Because I remember when you opened this, so you bought the building here in Fort Scott. So you bought the building, or if I remember right, you had some remodel stuff, maybe a little bit.
We worked on it for 2 months before we actually opened. When we bought the restaurant, there was a house to the west of us and there's a house to the north of us that actually came with the property. We excavated this house and made it into additional parking.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's limited storage and stuff over here. And since we live in Nevada, we kept that house to store, extra cups, napkins, and naps in the afternoon are nice.
Yeah. So on that, we're talking about the hours that are involved. So giving up a little bit of the convenience of a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday kind of deal, versus we probably work a solid 3 hours a day here, right?
Yeah.
So
if you put pen and paper pencil and paper to it, we are the 2 lowest paid employees here if you do it hourly. Yeah.
Been there. So talk about that a little bit and how to balance that with because we see Matt would have been pretty little when you guys started this.
Our kids are a fundamental foundation in the reason we can do this as long as we have, because they were, I think, 8 and 10 when we opened it. So the house came in handy. They would stay over there. When they got hungry, they'd come over. They would open the doors for customers, and they discovered they got paid for it. They'd get tipped. And then when they got old enough, they grew up here, so we put them.
They were easy to train.
Very easy to
Because
train.
they already knew everything.
They were eager to do it because they'd get bored and they'd want to come over and see what we were doing. I threw Samantha on the register. She was a hostess for a lot of years, and right now she waitresses and manages. Matt washed dishes, and then he knew how to cook, and we're always looking for cooks, and he stepped up to it. As soon as he graduated from high school, he opted not to go on to school, so he stepped in full time.
So is a full, which I know that, but Sharon, full family operation.
Mm-hmm.
Mom, Dad, well actually now Grandma and Grandpa.
Yeah.
And Matt and Sam.
Since we're under the coronavirus lockdown and we can't use the dining room, Sam our daughter has 2 kids, and she's been bringing them over 2 days a week, and they kind of have the run of the dining room while we're doing carry out, which is kind of how our kids got started. So the next generation is actually learning what's going on.
So that is something to bring up, is this whole lockdown. This is an issue for businesses like yours.
Yes.
It's something I know Aunt Shani and I have talked just a little bit about. Called and said, hey, this is probably obviously going to impact you guys. What's the biggest change? Obviously, the takeout deal. How have you managed around that?
We were fortunate that this building used to be a drive-up, so we have existing windows in the kitchen that we were able to take screens out of, and that is where we do all of our carry out, walk up, call in. they come up to the window and we do all that there.
Even being what this lockdown is and the challenges it's presented, customers have been, pretty consistent, pretty loyal. The regular customers kind of deal.
Yeah, we've had a lot of very, very generous customers that come in, and they know the girls aren't getting tips like they were, and I'm not gonna name any names or anything, but someone came in a couple weeks ago and bought a $20 meal, paid with $100 and said, keep the change. We
Wow.
appreciate you guys still being here doing what you're doing.
Wow, that really means a lot whenever things are as rough as they are.
It does, because initially our sales were down to about a third of what we were doing. We're still not at 100% by any means, and we won't be because we can't move the food at the volume we were. But I think we're at least at 50%, if not a little bit higher on some days.
Well, that's good. I mean,
Word of mouth has gotten out that we're open. So a lot of people don't come to the east side of town, so word's kind of getting out that we are open.
And I've got to say, the city of Fort Scott, they had immediately, once the lockdown happened, had an application available to all the small businesses. You had to apply for it and you had to fill out some paperwork, but we did get a grant from the city that helped us pay our first payroll and
wow.
and some bills that were starting to stack up.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a godsend. That's what it
Yeah,
was.
and restaurant world, if you're thinking about getting into the restaurant business, don't. It's a very, very marginal field.
It's like when someone asks about farming. Some there's times that you're like, "You sure you want the boys to do this?" I'm like, "I don't know."
It builds character.
Something like that, yeah. So, how do you decide, what kind of food you wanted to offer? So you were just a little bit older than me, 35-ish. We're gonna start this restaurant. You've had experience in that, versus then and now, and how you've, say the menu's changed a little bit, probably. So how do you go through that decision?
Well, when we came over, JT Maloney's had kind of stopped, did kind of quit. And so we just took the menu, we cut it down. Modified it. I had one other cook that came with me from JT's. He knew the menu as well, so that made it easier.
And we had a waitress that came over that was able to help train all the other staff.
We could train people, everybody was on kind of the same page. But then just over the course of years, we would try stuff, and if it works, yeah. If not, let's not try it again.
One case in point, we used to serve steaks when we first opened. That's such a high dollar item that we couldn't sell it every day because we ended up throwing out more product than what we were selling. So now we run steaks as a special one night a week, and we do great. But we buy a case of steaks, it sells in one night, and we're done.
It's gone.
We don't have to carry inventory of that
Yeah.
anymore.
What's your favorite thing to eat that you guys have that you make? I'd weigh like 400 pounds if I had to sit there and constantly cooking.
The prime rib.
Yeah.
We've cooked it for years, and I'm never tired of it. I'll always eat prime rib.
When I do get compliments from customers on the food, I always tell them never trust a skinny cook. Because, we do enjoy our food, and that's why we're doing what we do.
Yeah. What's so how do you think you had prior restaurant experience. So how do you think, then your tenure at the bank, how do you think those skill sets, obviously some of that translated into?
We actually were kind of talking about that the other night. He does marketing or he does product development and all that. I do marketing and accounting. So I take care of the books. I do like the Facebook, the promotions and advertising. He does the in-house stuff. That's what we're both good at. We make a good team that way.
Yeah. Did you ever think, so when you guys were dating, got married, do you think that was it ever kicked around, we'd like to work together someday? Because I know there's days that I've had, like I put it on Facebook the other day, that there's times that my partner does not like me.
Well, actually, we're different that way. When we dated, we worked together. When we got married, we still worked together, and it wasn't until we had kids that we started working separate jobs.
Okay.
And then that was actually a little bit difficult because I felt the hours he had to work at a restaurant and I had a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, I felt like I was raising kids by myself.
Uh-huh.
And you know, he would get vacation time, we'd get to go and do things as a family, but we had to schedule it and make sure it happened.
Yeah.
But then once I decided to leave the bank and come here full time, everyone thought we were crazy because husband and wife should not be together 24 hours. We're that weird couple that gets along better when we're with each other.
No. Any tips or tricks for that? You know, maybe.
Make time
How
for
about
yourself where you do get to spend some alone time
Yeah.
every once in a while.
Yeah.
I go home every night and I spend about an hour on the computer doing books, and
Mhm.
he goes upstairs and folds clothes. it works.
That's a good folded shirt if you ask me to.
Shirts go on hangers.
That's I think that's so being multi-generational now, have you ever, how do you handle that? I mean, I know a lot of, from a farming standpoint, a lot of operations, very familiar with that, and how I work with people. Do you think that's any different? If you ever sit down, here's kind of what we expect when say Matt and Sam come back full time. Was that a conversation that you had? Said, hey, here's what we expect now. You're not in high school. This is maybe transition, or they've been working so long that it was just just continuation, or what?
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
They both, when they started, we sat down and said, okay, you guys can work here, but you have to know, the same rules apply to you that applies to everyone else. You don't get special treatment just because your mom and dad own the place, other than the fact that we don't make them pay for their food, but that's beside the point. They usually fix it themselves, so.
Yeah. You don't charge it for that end of it then.
Actually, our son, Matt, he went through 3 years culinary at the high school in Nevada. And so when he came over full-time, you're talking about the generational thing, he has a lot of great ideas. He is our codes person that makes sure that everything is done by the book as far as health and safety standards. Because he's passed the Serve Safe.
Serve Safe, yes.
Yeah.
So, he makes sure that, everything's dated and labeled and put away and stocked. Not that Larry doesn't know how to do that, because he does all that and has been for years, but Matt has that side of it. Sam does the customer, the dealing with customers and greeting and.
So there's more to run a restaurant than chop, 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 here you go.
Yeah.
What was the most difficult thing, or was there any that, once you started doing this full time, that it's like, oh, okay, this is what we have to do now?
Honestly, the hardest thing for me is dealing with customers that come in with an attitude of the customer's always right and I want to be right, you have to make it right. I have a hard time with that.
Uh-huh.
But I've told Sam, what is the thing I say?
Kill them with kindness.
Kill them with kindness. You may not want to, and you can walk out the back door and scream, but keep a smile on your face and kill them with kindness.
That's awesome. If you hear the boys run around the background, it's because they're part of this little project too. But anything you think we might have left out?
No, not really.
No, but one thing you asked earlier, what is the hardest thing? Trying to keep up with finances. Because every time you think you have everything set and it goes according to plan, something happens, a lockdown or a breakdown, and restaurant equipment is kind of like a race car. You run it hard, and then it breaks down, you spend a ton of money on it and fix it, and you start running it hard again.
So that was a conversation that we had in our previous video, was, kind of saving for a rainy day, kind of being fairly conservative, I guess you'd say, which I think for a lot of people is a trait that, say, farmers have. You almost have to be. I would say that Grandpa is pretty fairly conservative. So do you think that has contributed to your success in running the business for 18 years, which kudos to you. That's a good amount of time to be in business.
Yeah, actually, restaurants, 90% fail the first year. So we were in the 10% that actually succeeded.
Wow, that's impressive.
But, I mean, the 18 years we've been here, we've put down new carpet twice. We've put in 2 air conditioners in the kitchen, 1 in the dining room. I don't know how many freezer units we've gone through, 3.
I think so, yeah.
I mean, just you're constantly doing
Constantly
repairing and upgrading as you can.
3 sets of fryers, I think.
Our second sign, we had a storm come through and blew the panels out of our sign and shattered
no
it.
kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You show up every day and it's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
this is happening today.
Yeah. We finally gotten it to the point where the door doesn't flood when it rains heavy now.
Yeah.
It's just, it's
Things
kind of
are-
like having an old car, an old hoopty. You gotta, if anyone came in and bought it, we'd have to tell them, okay, you can't do this and you can't do that.
Things like that go with entrepreneurship and business ownership that are not necessarily food and restaurant related, but there's a lot of things around that as well.
Right.
Sounds like.
And I'm sure we don't do anything textbook, because we're learning as we go. We're still learning.
We're still learning,
Yeah.
you're right.
And I guess I hope things start getting lifted soon. Obviously, that's making a lot of entrepreneur lifestyles very difficult. Right now is probably not the time for somebody want to start a business. It's pretty
No,
rough.
no.
Anyways, we're going to keep on covering different topics. I hope your guys' story, you enjoy sharing it. I enjoy hearing it because obviously I remember when you opened it, we were the first guinea pigs over here to eat. So,
Yeah.
that's neat to see, and I wanted you guys high up on our list to get started. So, anyways, thank you very much, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Share, please give us a share. We want more people to hear our stories, hear my aunt and uncle's stories. Matt, you want to say hi? Don't want you to miss out here. So, and thank you.